Hi everyone, welcome to a poker vlog with a bit of a difference. Poker with kids.
Fuck it, let's go. Don't tease me. Let's play some fucking cards.
This time on the vlog, we're going to have a look at another pub poker game. This one's a bit of a special event. It's the quarterly Hoops loyalty event. This is one of the venues that 888PL run their events on Friday and Saturday nights. And as part of the buy-in, they have an extra amount that goes towards the prize pool for their quarterly loyalty game. And to play in the loyalty game, you have to have played at least one game in the 3-month period that they're talking about. And how they work the buy-ins is the more you play, the cheaper the buy-in gets. So if you manage to play 17 games over the 3-month period, you actually get a free entry into the loyalty game with the 80k stack. So it's a slightly deeper stack than normal, 80k stack. Again, the usual sort of pub poker type levels. So you've got 12-minute levels, 100, 200 start blinds. So very, very fast structure. It's all self-dealt, so you basically get one round in per level. Every now and again you might get in one or two hands more or a few hands less if you have a big hand. But generally you're looking at basically one round per level. Of course, being a pub, or in this case a sports bar, I thought it'd be a good idea to bring the camera along, get some whole card footage, that sort of thing. But of course I failed to consider a pretty obvious aspect of getting whole card footage: lighting. Obviously in a casino it's a very bright place, so even if you are cupping your hands over your cards to avoid your nearby players from seeing the hands, you still got plenty of light not only to see it but also to come up on a recording. Not the same as I found out with the bar. Obviously the lighting isn't really designed to be bright. The bright lights are kind of the kick you out at the end of the night stuff. But with dim lights, once you put your hands near the cards and try and obviously lift them up to see the cards, it takes away much of the light, and most of the recording I got was a really good view across the table. Again, because of the angle of the camera, you can't really see that much on the table, and the whole cards is actually really tough to see. So that kind of was a bit of a fail on my part. However, I'll still talk through a few interesting hands from the night and how it turned out. So altogether for the evening, there were 60 players in the event, and something that is sort of standard for this event, rather than doing the usual sort of top 5 or 6 or around 10% as your payouts, in the loyalty game, the final table of 9 all gets paid, with the 9th place being around the $100 mark, up to a sort of 4-figure sum for first. So very much worth playing in the game with that extra money added. This time they had, I think, around about 3,000, just over 3,000 added to the prize pool. So definitely one of the games you really want to play if you can, because of that extra money. And the first vlog that I actually did, where I won the tournament there, that was my one event where I qualified to actually play in the loyalty event. So pretty good that I can actually play an event, win some money, and then that qualifies me for another event with an even bigger prize pool. So pretty good deal. I'll cut to the chase, and I actually finished up in 14th place out of 60, so just missing out on the final table and the money. But in terms of hands to run through, there's really only three really significant hands that had sort of some decisions to them. A lot of the hands worked out fairly straightforward. For example, there are hands where basically it was folded when I was a short stack in the big blind, folded to the small blind shoved. I looked down at a hand like ace king or kings. It actually happened on the 2 occasions, once with ace king, once with kings, and both times the small blind had woken up with a small pocket pair, thinking, well, okay, I'm at worst flipping, and a good chance to just fold and pick up the blinds and antes. However, obviously when you run a hand like pocket sixes into kings, it's not that great, and even when you're running pocket fours into ace king, it's again, it's a flip and not the easiest one to win all the time. So hands like that, I'm not going to bother going through. Fairly standard things. Is just, okay, well, one player's got their money good or one player's want to flip, so nothing really to discuss with those ones. First hand I want to have a look at was at the 300-600 level, and I looked down at ace queen offsuit from under the gun. So I raised it up to 1500, and it actually folded around to the small blind who called and the big blind who called as well. So we're 3 ways to a flop, and the flop came down king jack 6. Not a great flop for my hand, although I do have obviously the overcard with the ace and a gut shot to the 10. But when it was checked to me, given that I'm only up against the blinds, I think a c-bet might actually get through a reasonable amount of time. So I decided to bet 3,500 and actually got both players to call. Obviously not really what I was looking for. So in terms of my plan for the hand, obviously unless I improve, I'm really not going to, I'm pretty much done with the hand as far as my thinking's concerned. The turn was a king which paired the board, and this time again both players in the blinds checked to me. I don't really see any point to betting in this position. All I'm going to do is get worse hands to fold and better hands to call. So I simply checked back. The river was an interesting card. It was an ace, and now the small blind let out for 10,000. The big blind then went into a bit of a deep think. He mentioned at one point that he thought the small blind might have queen 10, which would obviously give him the Broadway straight. Debated for quite a while and eventually decided to fold, which then puts me in a position, because obviously now with the king's pen on the board, obviously I'm behind a king or queen 10. I can now beat any other pair, and with the ace with the queen kicker, my queen actually plays, so I'm actually beating any other ace apart from obviously ace king. So an ace jack or an ace 6 has been counterfeited, so my queen plays. So it's basically the main thing factoring into my decision anyway. So eventually I thought it's 10,000 the call. You're looking at around about 15, 16,000 already in the pot on top of the 10,000 that's the bet. So I don't have to actually be right that often to make it a profitable play. So I decided to make the call. My opponent then said, oh, I've got nothing. I turned over the ace queen and took it, and then the guy in the big blind was very gleeful and jumping up and down and going, oh, I folded ace jack. I knew someone had ace queen. I thought you had ace queen, which to my mind doesn't really make that much sense. But anyway, he was happy that he folded. I won the pot, and I was happy to take that one down.
Oh my god, do you know why I folded?
I thought I might have been able to get it.
I literally thought you had ace queen. I shit you not, I thought you had ace queen.
But you thought he had queen 10?
No. I said, no, not that. I said, I had a feeling someone had queen 10. When the ace come, I'm like, I literally thought you had ace queen. You know why I was so pissed off? So I'm like, the queen actually fucking plays here.
The ace killed me. If you had the ace, you would have fucking definitely folded there.
No. The ace makes me fold.
Well, what'd you have?
I had ace jack. When the king repeats, I'm fucking calling anything.
Our next game was at the 500, 1,000 level, and this time I was under the gun +1, and once again I looked down at ace queen offsuit. decided to raise it up to 3,500, and this time I managed to get 4 callers, so over half the table in the hand. So in a situation like this where it's multi-way, obviously with a game like this, players tend to be a bit looser, not only with the quicker structures and that, but just as a general thing, the players tend to play a bit more loose than you might expect at a different venue. So I was sort of essentially playing this fairly cautiously. Flop came down Queen 10-7 with 2 spades, Queen in 7 of spades. Obviously top pair, top kick is one of the better flops for my hand, and being multi-way, I want to lead out fairly big in terms of my bet sizing, trying to fold out a lot of marginal hands that might otherwise call. I don't want to just bet say 5,000 and get let's say a 7 to call, and then if the 7 pairs on the turn, I'm in a world of pain. So I lead out for 17,000 and get a call from the player to my direct left, and everybody else folds. The turn's another interesting card, the ace of spades, which gives me top 2 pair, but obviously puts down 3 spades, and the flush draw that was on the flop has come in. Again, there's nothing to necessarily say that my opponent has a flush. They could be very well calling me with a queen or something like that, a queen or a 10 or something like that. So again, happy to make a reasonably large size, and so I bet out 27,000, and then my opponent almost instantly throws in 2 $25,000 chips. With the rule that's over 50% of a raise, he has to make that up to a full raise and make it 54,000. But I do ask him, oh, did you want to call or raise? And he said, oh, I thought that was enough to put you all in, not realizing that I still had around 40,000 behind after the 27,000 bet. He just assumed that, oh, the 50,000 would be enough to put me all in, so he didn't bother putting any more in. Clearly, by that, the speed of what he did, the comfort level, there was a pretty good chance that I was actually beaten in this spot. So I had a bit of a think. Obviously, if I am behind, I still have potentially 4 outs. I don't think he's got aces or queens to have me totally crushed. So he might have a set of 7s or something like that. And even in that case, I've got obviously 2 aces and 2 queens as outs. Not really looking to put most of my tournament life on the line. With one card to come, only 4 outs, and a huge pot where I've only got a small amount behind, and knowing that I really have to improve to make my hand. So eventually, after all, a bit of thought, I decided to fold, and he was kind enough to turn over his cards and show King Jack of spades for a flop flush draw with an open and straight draw, and obviously he actually made both on the turn, but the ace-high flush was more than enough to beat my top 2 pairs. So happy to get away from that one. Obviously not good to lose a pretty decent chunk of my stack, especially seeing as that was one of the hands before the break, and it's always a bit mentally challenging to go from a stack of around 80,000-90,000 or thereabouts before the break with only 1 or 2 hands to go, and then all of a sudden you find yourself at the break and you're coming back to around 40,000. So obviously, and the points going up at the same time. So bit of hit to take, but again, in these kind of events, you don't win by getting eliminated. So happy to make the good fold on that occasion and keep the tournament life alive. The final hand from the event that I want to have a look at in any kind of detail is one that I got away from, but I'm not sure, given the circumstances, it was actually the correct fold. Obviously, with the value of hindsight and being very results orientated, it wasn't the right fold, but I'm not sure from a theoretical standpoint whether it's correct or not. So at this point we're playing 40,000 blinds with a 5,000 ante. I'm in the big blind for 40,000 and have around 200,000 behind, so around about 240,000 stack. Obviously, with a 40,000 big blind, you're only looking at 6 big blinds, so not the biggest stack altogether. But it folded around to player in middle position who went all in for 202,000. It folded back around to the small blind, who was the big stack of the table. He had about 500 or 600,000. Obviously, having been well covered and most of the table covered by a fair margin. He had a bit of a think and ultimately decided to re-raise all in as well. So obviously, taking away the option for me to just call and leave some fumes. So it's either all in for me or fold. I looked down at ace 10 of spades, which is a really interesting kind of hand. I think, given that it's suited, gives it extra value, but obviously not too much value. With 2 players all in, there's a pretty reasonable chance that one of them has an ace as well, and with the sizes, I'd probably be thinking to be a better ace. Although having said that, there is a chance that they could both have pocket pairs, which might be above or below the 10. So it's an interesting situation. That's the bit where I'm not sure about. Ultimately, I decided to make the fold, which in terms of the immediate look at the situation, it was the correct fold, as the player in middle position turned over ace king offsuit, and the small blind, who's a big stack, turned over pocket 9. So obviously, in isolation, I'll be flipping with the pocket 9s, but well behind the ace king. 3 reasons for the interest in the hand. The first one's the results orientated one. The board actually ran out king high, but my ace 10 would have made a straight, which obviously would have taken the pot. So I would have actually won the pot and ended up with a pretty sizable stack, and that would have almost definitely got me to the final table into the money. Second reason is from a theoretical standpoint, whether a hand like ace 10 suited is strong enough to call in that position, but also taking in mind the structure of the event and the general short stacks that were at the table. So it was obviously one of the better hands I'd seen for a while, but also comparing it to what my calling range would be there. So at what point do I go from a call to a fold, and that being the correct sort of decision? And clearly there's hands that are an easy fold, and there are hands that are an easy call. So I think basically any pocket pair, sort of probably about 7s or above, and ace king, ace queen are probably easy calls in that spot. But again, how far down the ace x ladder do you have to go for it to be an incorrect call, and at what point does a pocket pair really become an incorrect decision to call with? And the third reason is also a bit of a self-interested one. In terms of my own busted hand, I ended up getting short, or even shorter with, again, the blinds going up even further. I was got down to around about 100,000 by the stage, and the blinds actually gone up to 30-60 with a 5k ante. So again, pretty hefty blinds. I got to look down at queen 10 offsuit, decided to shove, got 2 calls and lost, so that put me out in 14th place. But again, given the fact that those blinds are increasing so rapidly, and they're fairly large jumps, that's what makes me think that maybe the ace 10 hand might have actually been a call, in terms of something that might have been a mistake on my part or not. But anyway, that's how it went. So out in 14th place, missing money, but good night out, and good to see some familiar faces again. Also, a bit of another example where you can see the wonderful lighting on display. But I decided to hang around for a little bit after I got eliminated and watch some of the final table. So I've actually got a little bit of footage of some of the hands from the final table from a spectator's point of view. So I'll show you some of the all-in and call hands, and the ones where you actually see what's going on. But again, apologies for the camera work on this one. Not so much because the camera works dodgy, but just because the lighting's so poor, so it's really difficult to see exactly what's going on. Sit back and see the fun of final table of a loyalty game at Hoops and some of the eventualities on it.
Oh,
You want to rub it in.
especially after it's a good fight and you should kill.
That's the worst.
Chop it up.
I'm still spectating
Yeah,
it.
just wait.
260 total.
I hate when there's like 260 total. Someone just watching the fight and accidentally kill them.
Let's go.
That's what I do. Yeah.
Let's go.
Especially when there's eight
What was wrong? Start to loot, most banks.
Don't tell them too early.
Come on, Tinny!
That's what I say.
And the diamond block.
No, straight.
Unlucky, mate. Unlucky, mate.
Lisa, how does that win?
Lisa, how's that win?
I got crushed.
All in, forward. All in.
Hello. Here we go. We have action.
Ash goal.
Wouldn't matter.
Oh, really?
You're a rock. I can't let you
Fuck's
fold
sake,
that
never throw
much.
any erases.
Absolute rock.
Wow.
2-3's good.
Oh, hang on, Dave. You don't
Come on, one time.
You don't want to choose it.
Of hearts.
No.
Flush.
Yes.
Chop it up.
Except for no, I had a way better pair. Hey.
There we go. Hello. 3 all-ins. This is what we want.
Let's go. Ace is that?
Come on, Ash. Knock him out. Come on, Ash.
Everything you have at.
You haven't looked, Ash.
Have a 10-9 right now. Have
Sorry,
a
go straight.
10.
It is 10.
Have a 10. Straight. Have an 8. Have a fold.
Hang on, you get the hang on, show
Yeah,
the
you
other
get-
card. Show the other card.
Take 3.
Let's put there.
He gets a pair.
So
So there's much what he's got. What has he got?
you hear it?
Yeah, and what? Yeah, he just went, didn't even look. He didn't look.
Yeah, I called it.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
240.
240 from each.
You got more.
Yeah, you're gone, Terry. 240 from each, and Ash gets Terry's leftovers.
That's Ash, yeah.
That's Ash. That's Ash.
I like it, Terry. Get some cash money.
Toy show pair price just keeps going, mate.
I'm on 2. All in, Kim.
Go, Kim.
Go, Kimmy. Go, Kimmy. Go, Kimmy.
It's a huge amount more.
60 on top.
Let's go, Kim.
Come on, Kimmy. Come on, Kimmy.
Yes! What a fold! What a fold!
Done.
Oh!
Yeah.
I like it, Kim.
Yeah, like Kimmy.
Exactly. Alright, no worries. Let's do it.
Well done, guys. Play one hand, see who wins.
No, I don't want to do it that way.
Well done.
That's going to wrap up the vlog for this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed the action there in the loyalty game at Hoops in Baronia. Don't forget, if you liked the video, hit the like button and subscribe if you want to get more Poker with Kids action in the future. And I'll see you again shortly with another vlog. Thanks everyone.